Good day, fish tankers. You guys know that these two tanks behind me are dirted tanks, and that refers to a tank that's got a substrate that has a layer of soil at the bottom capped with a layer of sand. Now that's a cheap way to do a low-tech planted tank, but sometimes I've had a lot of people contact me and when things don't quite go right or I have little challenges with it, and I'm going to address these problems as best I can. So Delina Lashinsky, who contacted me via Messenger, this video is for you, and hopefully this will help you out, but maybe a lot of other people as well. Even though it's on the face of it a simplistic system, there are some challenges and there are some things that you must watch out for. So if you're interested in that, or if you're thinking of doing a dirted tank, then this video is for you. Okay, I hope I pronounce your name right, Delina. If not, forgive me. But I think the first mistake that people make with these deep dirted substrates. Now, just for clarification, it's not my method. It's a method I took from the YouTuber Father Fish, who is in turn influenced by Diana Wallstead. There's the Ecology of a Planted Aquarium, Dr. Diana Wallstead. Go look her up if you want to. They are not quite the same, but there are similarities. Now, I took Father Fish's old recipe before he developed these supplements and things, which of course I don't use sitting here in South Africa. So I'm just going to go through what I do and what has worked for me. Now, the first mistake I think what people make is they make the soil mixture too rich. They have success, or they think this mixture has got some nutrients in, but I'm going to double up on it and I'm going to make the plants grow even faster. And I've heard people using only compost or putting stuff like cow manure in it, or, you know, just adding everything in that they can and just making a very rich soil mixture, you know, just taking compost from a compost heap outside. And I think that's where some of the trouble can start. We have too many nutrients in the tank. Now, here is a soil mixture that I use. It comes from an old Father Fish video, as I've said, and it's not the be-all and end-all. This is just what I tried and it worked. Now, what I do is I take 2 parts peat moss. I'm going to put it up on the screen. It's those blocks. You can buy all these from your garden center or your garden division within your hardware store. You know, wherever you buy stuff for your garden, you put that block in a bucket, you put some warm water on, becomes soft, so you use 2 parts of that peat moss. So if you're gonna use cups, coffee mugs, 2 mugs of that peat moss in a bucket. And then you take 1 part organic compost soil, 1 part organic compost, sorry, just 1 part organic compost. As long as it's organic, you get it from your garden center, and use 1 part of that. So to the 2 cups of peat moss, you're going to add 1 cup of organic compost. And then you're going to use some organic potting soil, also from your garden center. You're going to have way much more than you need in the size of bags that you buy it, but you can keep that for your garden. Of course, it's much cheaper than aqua soil. And you add 1 part of organic potting soil. So another cup of organic potting soil. I'm just using that as an example. If you get, that's enough for about a cube like this. So 2 parts peat moss, and then a part organic compost and a part of organic potting soil. And to that I add just sort of a handful or a pinch. If it's only a small amount, I just sprinkle some bone meal over it, just through some minerals, and then I sprinkle a small amount of Epsom salts in. About 1/4 teaspoon to 1/2 teaspoon to a teaspoon. It's not a fixed amount, but just a little bit, not a lot. And then you mix this with a bit of water, not a lot of water, so you get a sort of a thick mud consistency. And then you put 1 inch, not more than 1 inch, not more than 2.5 centimeters. You can maybe have a little less if it's a smaller tank and the substrate is not that big, but not more than 2.5 centimeters on the bottom of your aquarium. So that is the soil mixture I use. Some people use soil out of their garden. I don't know, my garden soil is very poor, I don't know if there's been pesticides, I don't use that. And then you cap it off with sand, which you wash. You need to wash it thoroughly beforehand. And what is sand? I would say it can be like what you see here in the aquarium to my right. It's about the consistency of beach sand, your sand you have on the beach, or you can use what I have in here, and that's marketed as gravel, but it's a very fine gravel. It's got a grain size of about 1 millimeter to 2 millimeters at the most, you know, and that will work. Pool filter sand is a little bit more coarse, that will work as well. So that's what you have to cap it with. And then the second mistake that people make is they use gravel. They use a grain size that is too coarse. Don't use gravel. That's what you see now. That's not going to work because it's going to release the nutrients from the soil mixture up into a water column, and you're going to have a mess. So use sand between beach grain size sand and coarse like sand, like pool filter sand, but not gravel. And then the third mistake people make is they don't have a sand cap or a sand layer that's thick enough. It is too thin, and then the nutrients also come out too quickly, and you can have what Delina has had. Her tank keeps turning a dark brown, you know. So that's what you can have in. So you have to have a correct sand. It has to be the correct thickness, and you have to have ideally 2 inches. That's 5 centimeters. So as you can see here on the tank on my right, that's a substantial substrate. People don't realize how thick that substrate is. What you have there is 3 inches. Now, can it be a little less? Yeah, okay, the tank here on my side, I think that sand cap is a little less than 2 inches, but not much less. But I think also the soil layer is also a little less. But you've got to have a ratio of 1 to 2, yeah, in favor of a sand on your substrate there. Right, that's that. So that's the other mistake people make, not enough sand. The sand layer is not thick enough. Now, also, you have to plant the aquarium, and now think about it a little bit. You have to use enough plants, and you must also use enough rooted plants, not just 1 or 2, because the nutrients will now be in the substrate, so you want plants that feed off it. So things like Amazon swords, crypts, Vallisneria, plants that's usually in a rosette form with well-developed root systems. That's what you want in your DIRTED aquarium. You can put in stem plants like Ludwigia or Hornwort or Rotala. You can put them in as well. That's also good, but you must have a predominant mix of root plants in the DIRTED tank. If it's only stem plants and epiphytes, which are plants that you put on a log or on a piece of stone, like Anubias or Java fern, they feed out of a water column. So they're not going to use much nutrients in your substrate. So have enough rooted plants there from the start, not 1 or 2 or 3. About 70% of your substrate must be covered in plants, or at least they have to grow into that. Right, when you fill the tank up, another thing with the water turning brown that you must watch, that's not really a DIRTED substrate thing, but watch your driftwood. Now, spiderwood, usually they don't leach tannins into the water. I haven't found that. But things like Mupani wood, they will leach a lot of tannins. It's not harmful. It just colors your water brown. You can soak it for a long time beforehand. Don't boil it. It softens the wood. And you can soak it, or you can put something like Purigen in your filter if you have a hang-on back or canister filter. That's a chemical filter media, and it will remove it. So watch the wood, because sometimes people think it's a DIRTED substrate. It's not. It's the wood. So those are the things that you've got to watch out for. Then, as it develops, you're going to see a couple of things. You're going to see bubbles coming out of a substrate. Only 3 or 4 at a time. It may last for a month or more. You see a couple of bubbles rising every now and then. People say it's going to be sulfur or whatever, going to poison your tank. That will dissolve into the atmosphere. So make sure that the tank has got some aeration in the form of a filter that circulates the water, so that can dissolve. And you're probably going to have an initial nitrite, and you obviously have to cycle your aquarium, unless you do what I do and put a fully mature filter in the tank. And you also are going to have most probably a nitrate NO3 spike in the beginning. Do some partial water changes, and then you'll see it will go all the way down after. I haven't had it take longer than a month to get there. So that's what you can expect out of a dirted tank. And then there's a few misconceptions. In a wall-stayed aquarium, that's not necessarily the same as a father fish aquarium, but it is also a dirted aquarium. The idea is to let the plants become the filtration of a tank, which we do anyway, but the wall-stayed aquarium needs a lot more on it. So Diana wall-stayed usually has a small water pump is what she prefers, a circulatory pump that just moves the water, and she doesn't have much filtration or any filtration at all. People think that these tanks have to be filterless. That's not at all the truth. I use dead normal filtration, not overkill filtration, but I do have proper filtration. Father fish don't have much, but he has sponge filters in all these tanks. And if you look at this photo here, Diana wall-stayed, you're going to have a circulation pump. We see these days she favors small internal power filters with a UV even. And so nothing major, but you want something to circulate the water, keep it moving around. People also ask, should I put in liquid fertilizer? If you only have rooted plants in a dirted tank, no, you don't have to. If you do have epiphytes, Java fern and Nubias, or stem plants, I would use a simple all-in-one weekly or twice weekly fertilizer at a low dosage just for those plants specifically. And the other misconception is that you never do water changes. There's some people who do this method. I find over time you do far less water changes, but I still like to do partial water changes every now and then. My tanks gets about a 50% water change every 6 weeks. So that's it. Those are the pitfalls and mistakes that you can make with dirted substrates. I hope this helps. If it does, then please share among your friends. And until we see each other again, remember to take good care of those domestic denizens of the deep. Sorry, fish tankers, before I go, never disturb the substrate. Never disturb the sand cap. So when you do maintenance, you do a water change, pour the water back gently or make it fall on top of a piece of hardscape so you don't disturb the sand cap, because if the swell comes out, you'll have a big mess. Likewise, if you gravel vac, do not gravel vac dirted tanks. You don't stick the gravel vac in, you just hover it lightly over the top to pick up some detritus.